You know, empires, they don't just collapse overnight. It's funny, actually. Right before everything goes wrong, they often look more powerful than ever. We're about to dive into the story of just 5 years, that brought the greatest empire the world had ever seen to its knees. It's a story that proves that even the giants can fall.
It always starts with this feeling, doesn't it? This incredible confidence that you've got it all figured out, that you've mastered the world.
And then comes the expansion. This relentless drive to just keep growing, pushing the borders out to the very edge of the map.
And finally, that dangerous, intoxicating feeling of invincibility, the belief that you're unstoppable. Well, that belief, it's about to be shattered in a very dark forest in Germany. All right, so let's set the scene. Picture this. It's the year 6 AD. The Roman Empire, led by the legendary Emperor Augustus, is at the absolute peak of its game. I mean, the decades of bloody civil war, that's ancient history. The empire is humming along. It's stable, it's rich, it's organized. You've got those famous Roman roads crisscrossing continents, and the legions? Well, the legions are everywhere, a symbol of total, unquestioned power. And look, this wasn't just them bragging. If you zoom out and look at the whole world at this time, Rome was the superpower, no question. Sure, you had the Parthian Empire over in the east, a serious player for sure, but their whole relationship with Rome was this delicate dance of threats and diplomacy. Way out east, you've got the Han Dynasty in China, ruling millions with this incredibly complex system. The world felt orderly, and right at the very center of it all, Rome.
But here's the thing about massive empires. They're like a rubber band stretched to its limit. They're only as strong as their weakest point. And in 6 AD, that breaking point was a place called Illyria, what we call the Balkans today. A huge revolt just exploded. It was so big that Augustus had to pull together almost half of the entire Roman army just to deal with it. Suddenly, for the first time in a long time, the empire was stretched dangerously thin. It was fighting to grow in one place while desperately trying not to break in another.
Okay, so now it's 7 AD, and the pressure is really starting to build. Think about it. All of Rome's best generals are tied up in this brutal war in Illyria. So who's watching the northern frontier, in Germania? Guys who think everything's fine, that the area is totally under control. And this is where the main character of our story quietly enters the stage.
And here he is, Arminius. What's so wild about this guy is just how deep the deception went. To the Romans, he was one of them. I mean, yeah, he was a German prince, but he grew up in Rome, he was a Roman citizen, he was a commander in their army. They trusted him. They pointed to him as the perfect example of their civilizing influence. But behind that loyal exterior, Arminius was taking everything he learned from Rome and using it to secretly unite his people for one epic betrayal.
And this right here, this is the great tragic irony of empire, isn't it? To control the people, you have to teach their leaders your ways. You show them your military tactics, your strategy, how you think. But what you're really doing is handing them a user's manual on how to defeat you. With Arminius, Rome thought it was creating an ally. What it actually did was forge its own worst nightmare.
So we get to 8 AD, and on the surface, things are looking up. A false calm kind of settles over everything. That huge war in the Balkans, it's finally winding down. It looks like Rome has won. From their point of view, the biggest problem is solved. But the real threat, it wasn't the one they could see. It was hiding, brewing in the shadows of those northern forests.
You know, sometimes winning is more dangerous than losing. With that victory in Illyria almost in the bag, Rome got comfortable. They let their guard down. They just assumed Germania was quiet and would stay that way. And that complacency, that feeling that they were just too big to fail, that's exactly what Arminius was waiting for. While Rome was celebrating one win, he was busy setting the deadliest trap in their history.
And that brings us to the moment it all goes wrong. The year is 9 AD. This is the year the myth of Roman invincibility dies. The Roman governor there, a man named Varus, is feeling pretty good about himself. Overconfident, maybe even arrogant. He decides he's going to march his legions right through the heart of the territory, just to remind everyone who's boss.
So Varus gathers 3 entire legions. We're talking the 17th, 18th, and 19th. But here's the crazy part. They aren't marching for war. It's more like a parade, a slow-moving administrative column with families, supplies, the whole shebang. And who's their trusted guide, leading them down a narrow, muddy path in the middle of the dense Teutoburg Forest? You guessed it, Arminius.
And then the trap springs. For 3 days, it was pure chaos. Arminius's warriors came out of nowhere, hitting the long, vulnerable Roman line again and again. It wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. 3 entire legions, more than 20,000 people, soldiers, families, everyone, just gone, wiped off the face of the earth. It was, without a doubt, one of the worst military defeats Rome ever suffered.
And this is the key takeaway, right? This wasn't just about losing a battle. This was a psychic wound, a turning point. The defeat was so complete, so horrifying, that Rome basically gave up. They never again tried to conquer Germany, east of the Rhine River. That river became the final frontier, a border drawn not by a Roman mapmaker, but in Roman blood.
When word of this got back to Rome, it created a panic. I mean, the emperor himself, Augustus, was said to have just wandered his palace for months, literally banging his head on the walls, screaming, "Varus, give me back my legions." The next year, 10 AD, was all about damage control. It was a year of shock, and a moment where Rome had to stop and ask itself, who are we, really?
And the reaction was swift. The old playbook, thrown out the window. That centuries-long strategy of constant, relentless expansion, it was over, done. The new name of the game was defense. They sent their top general, Tiberius, not to conquer more land, but just to hold the line on that terrifying new frontier. For the first time, Rome had to admit that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all powerful.
It's just staggering when you look at the timeline. Seriously, think about how fast this all happened. In 5 short years, Rome goes from the absolute peak of its power to being stretched to the breaking point, to getting cocky and complacent, to suffering a defeat that shakes its very foundations, and finally, giving up on the one thing that had always defined it: expansion.
When you boil it all down, the biggest thing Rome lost between 6 and 10 AD wasn't the soldiers or even the land. It was an idea. It was the myth. The illusion that the Roman Empire was this unstoppable force of nature that would just expand forever. That myth was shattered, and not just for their enemies, it was shattered for the Romans themselves.